Welcome to the Real Monster D. That would be me. So, there is a brand new Godzilla anime coming. Godzilla Singular Point. And it is all the talk right now. One of the main talking points about what is going on with this anime is some of the somewhat drastic design choices for many of the kaiju. And one in particular seems to have gotten a lot of interesting feedback so far, and that would be by one Jaguar. Yes, there has been quite a bit of talk about how this new design is a bit too silly, a bit too weird, a bit too out there for the old size-changing robot. And to that I just have to say, do you remember Godzilla vs. Megalon? That entire film was awash with silliness. Jaguar is a fun, beat-em-up, silly, robotic monster with a scarily happy grin. And I loved him. But, yes, the new design is different. You know, people complain, it's too squared off. They certainly complain about the sort of mallet arms and the super thin waist that seems like it may fall apart at his merest turn. But I implore you to think about just how much worse this could be. Think of some other choices they could have made in this design. Why they could have stuck a little too closely to the original and taken those sort of Michelin tire ovals or round bits that Jaguar is made out of, and they could have blown those way out to tire size proportion. They could have introduced to the world a Heisei style Jaguar. Replace all of that kung fu fighting with nothing but lasers and blasters. They could have given you a Cal Arts Jaguar. And perhaps even the most frightening of all is, considering the style that they went with for the entire show, they could have just stuck with his original design, which is maybe what you want. But remember, this is something that has to mesh well with the style of the rest of the anime. The anime is not live action, and it is being done in its own style, which is different from the previous Godzilla anime, which are different from everything else. And that is one of the things I like about the Godzilla franchise, is there are so many interpretations and versions of him to enjoy, that there's at least something for everybody. And also, we have yet to see this version of Jaguar in full action. I mean, he's done little more in the trailer besides sort of barely rise. We do not know just what all else he is capable of. He could rise up to be a favorite. I mean, I theorize, it shows him with these mallet hands, but what if these are just one of the modes that he has? Instead of just changing sizes, perhaps... To me, he almost looks like he might be a sort of Inspector Gadget type, with all sorts of weird, shifty parts and bits coming out and going. And, Inspector Gadget is a pretty goofy, silly character, and he would, in a way, fit right on in with Jaguar there, so why not? So I say, until we see the actual anime itself in full, or at least more action by Jaguar himself, let us hold our judgment and reservations and just be open-minded, because you never can tell. This may just be the new Jaguar that you want to see. Punch, punch, punch. Well, thank you for rolling on in. Yes. I was recently pondering all my past travels to the wonderful conventions I attended over the years. And of course, that led my mind to start considering music. Along those travels, before I set out, I always made a point to prepare myself a very particular playlist that I dubbed Ride Rock. This was an hours-long set full of songs all about being on the road and driving and being on the highway and all that sort of thing. Some are fast, some are long and windy, but the whole feeling was just the idea of being on the road while listening to songs on the road is such a perfect feel. So, I'm going to share with you today 5 Ride Rock songs that you may add to your playlist that may not already be there. Yes, let us roll along. First is from one of my favorite artists, Mr. Alice Cooper. This hails from the Paranormal album, and the song is Dynamite Road. Oh, and does this song come with a bang? This is essentially the darkly comedic tale of when a souped-up Cadillac and a party mode limousine, let us just say, cross paths. Yes. Alice Cooper definitely has a way of painting the picture of all the cartoonishly worrisome drivers and riders in each of those 2 vehicles. But it is fast, it is fierce, and a joy to listen to, despite all the screeching carnage. Next is a song by Anvil called No Time. This is off of their 2020 album, Legal at Last. And No Time really just reminds me of reaching the near end of that journey whenever I had to go ahead and figure out where to check in and where to put my belongings and all that sort of thing. And actually, riding all on up to whenever the first actual day of a convention would be could often induce sweat. And this song definitely puts me in mind of that time. In the moment, it may be stressful and hard, but after the fact, it definitely is a joy to think about and remember all that your haste has accomplished. Next, I have the song Death Rides the Highway by Savage Master. You can find this on their album Mask of the Devil. This is a quick, blazing track, not even 3 minutes long, and it is rip-roaring. Yes. Whenever I hear this song, 2 things. One, it comes at the very end of this album, and I frequently find myself putting it at the very end of playlists, because it's a perfect cap at the end of any sort of like heavy metal list, whether it's ride rock or otherwise. And 2, because of the way it's sung, whenever I listen to the song, the first thing I think of is if they would finally make a Twisted Metal theatrical film. This song deserves to be the theme song to my favorite Mr. Grimm. Next is a song from the mighty Raven, and the song is Motorheadin'. Yes. You might expect this to be an obvious homage to the late great band trio Motorhead. I would argue that it is, but more thematically than in its lyrics necessarily. It does not necessarily name drop any of those past band members or songs per se. It is more about their own experiences on the road. This is the idea of carrying your band load with you on the road and running earlier or running behind schedule or that sort of thing. And it's sped up and it's basically a fight to get to where you're going on time and in the right frame of mind. So yes, Motorhead by Raven. And last is an album I do not have physically in front of me, but the song is called Highway to Madness by Quartz. Just like Raven, they are another new wave of British heavy metal band, by the way. Yes. And Highway to Madness is a bit of an older song. but it has that nice, steady engine motor purr of a riff going behind it. And, it talks about, Wings of Madness, and it is amazing. It's certainly, I will take it over a certain classic song about highways and danger zones and that sort of thing. And not necessarily directly referring to those sorts of vehicles. But it's an amazing song, and if you wish to find it, right now, from my understanding, for a limited time, you can actually find this on a digital download compilation album called The Flame Still Burns. It was put together for the new wave of British heavy metal themed charity fest called Mearfest, which was instigated by Brian Mear. So, if you want to check this entire wonderful album out, just go to mearfest.org and you can find the link there. And you'll have even more songs that you can ride along and rock to. Well, I hope you roll along to some of these. What are some of your favorite ride rock songs? Well, it is time I get a rollin'. Welcome to the drawing challenge. Well, you know I am fond of drawing animals, and I have some particularly favorite animals always in mind. So today I figured the challenge would be I take my two favorite animals and combine them into one crazy kaiju. First animal is my favorite insect of all, and that would be the praying mantis. And then I will combine that with my favorite large animal, the Komodo dragon. Yes. So, insect and lizard meet to make a major monster. Let us begin. So, the mantis and the Komodo dragon. Well, let me start out with something I know that they both have in common, and that is just long bodies. They're very long creatures in general. I've been fortunate enough to have seen a Komodo dragon in person before at the zoo in Pittsburgh. Beautiful creature, big, majestic to my eyes for sure. And I think I'm going to make limbs to start out with that are much more like the Komodo dragon. And then I'm going to take advantage of just how many limbs the praying mantis has. So I picked two predator animals. You think that was incidental, that two of my favorite animals happen to be carnivores, hunters? Yeah, perhaps not. The mantis was in my favor for a very long time, and that was due to just a life of interactions, direct contact with mantises. The first time I saw one, it was sort of above my door when I was a very young child, probably not even 5 yet, and it just was hanging out there, sort of under the roof of where I grew up. And I just remember it being the biggest insect thing I had ever seen before, and it was so strange the way that it looked at me, the way it turned its head whenever I made movements. It's one of those creatures, is that mix of it being sort of alien, but also strangely familiar at the same time, like, because you're just not used to insects turning their heads to see you. It almost gives itself that slight personification, right? So that always fascinated me. And I got a little bit older, and I started trying to, as I kept seeing mantises, I got braver and braver, and I got the idea that I wanted to try to capture one. And I did one day, just to keep in a little terrarium for a little while, to sort of watch it up close and feed it. I used to go out and hunt grasshoppers and other various insects, mostly grasshoppers though, to feed these things. This was in late summer, by the way. Late summer, usually around August, late July, early August, when they're sort of at their peak in size. I would catch one, keep it for a while and observe it, and eventually would let it go back into the wild. But the first time I had one, I did not directly touch it or grab it. I was still hesitant, still afraid. So, let me see here. I got a surprise for you. And give it a bit of a mixture of the mantis and Komodo dragon head there. Complete with a big forky tongue. Just going to get little black teeth for now. There we go. But yes, I remember actually handling this first mantis pet of mine with gloves. I believe they were big yellow rubber kitchen gloves to try to keep myself safe, but only worked for a moment because it quickly crawled out from my hands and actually up my arm, and I think it wound up on my back, and I was scared. I may have yelled and screamed a little bit. I eventually got it off safely, amazingly. But I did take note of the fact that despite all that madness, it did not bite me. And I attempted to handle them again, I think first with gloves, and again no biting. And over the course of years, I got more and more comfortable with handling mantises, and to this day, I have yet to sustain a bite from one. They seem as though they should be able to bite because they have those sort of sharp chewing mouth parts, so they can eat their prey live and whole and rather quickly. But out of the mantises I handled, I found them all to be rather gentle. Now, the one thing that did startle me with some of the later ones I held was if you hold them too tight, which you should not do anyway. I learned that you always just let them sort of crawl on you, and maybe keep a hand over to without touching them to obscure their desire to fly. But when I held one a little bit tighter, it seemed like it was almost out of fear. It would grab a hold of one of my fingers with its two little front arms, and it just put on that pressure. It just was never bit, never attacked, but it just held on sort of for dear life. And you can feel the absolute devastating pressure that tiny little creature has on there. I mean, I had to wait for it to just relax to get off. Can you imagine being a little grasshopper, a little insect, and falling into that vice grip? There's virtually no escape at that at a more equal size. So yes, it's easy to see why they're such great predators. All right, and now I'm going to switch and do a little bit of coloration here. I'm going to go with sort of a double green here. Now, Komodo dragons have always just fascinated me, just from what they are. I mean, they're pure immense size for being the largest lizards on Earth, and I suppose the second largest family of reptiles after all the crocodilians. They're just beasts, and the fact that they only exist on a small island chain. Everything about them just seems like something right out of an Arthur Conan Doyle novel. And the fact that we went for so long, decades and decades and decades, under the assumption that they attacked prey and took them down via their own sort of toxic cocktail of bacteria in their mouths, most notably gangrene. It was only within the last couple of decades that it was officially discovered that no, they in fact are venomous reptiles. Ugh. So they're the biggest lizard that has ever lived, and they have venom glands. Seems almost unfair, does it not? Alright. I abandoned the darker green I was going to go for and went back to the more uniform, lighter one. But you know what? I'm going to bring back the darker green right towards the end, because I think it'll work perfectly for eyes. There we go. And then I'm going to finish it off with a mixture. I'm going to go in on this tongue and sort of do some light jabs of purple, not to make it purple exactly, but from where you're at, once I mix the purple with the red, it should start to look a little bit pink. This is almost like doing the old comic book dots. Little matrices. How's that? This is almost like an Animal Kingdom sort of centaur. Alright. And I'm going to call it. And here we go. My two favorite monsters, Komodo Dragon and the Mantis, combined into one. I suppose you might call this a Komodo Mantis, or the Praying Dragon. In any case, is it green enough for you? Is it enough teeth and claws? Well, I hope you enjoyed both this and the video entire. If you have, please do click on the like button and toll that bell, and also please do support on my Patreon channel. Until next time, I am Monster D, and this is the real Monster D, so stay monstrous. Rah!